Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. And of course, we break down Origin 2. So I'm going to do an Origin 2 rapid reaction. I guess it's not that rapid. It's been about 22 hours. But we've got to talk all about the massive game. The series is still alive, guys. And of course, we've got round 16, which kicks off tomorrow. We did go 2-1 on best bets in round 15. We are 30-22, which is good for 58% for the season. Of course, this isn't a regular time slot because, as I've explained in the past, and as you guys would know, we just don't want to dive into the upcoming round until Origin is in the books, until we sort of know the aftermath, and until people care about the upcoming round. So we do have 7 games to dive into. I've got best bets, but I want to get your thoughts on Origin and share my notes on it as well. So we'll go a bit of Origin chat for 10 best bets, so you know where they are to find, and then the 7 games. All right, so where do we begin? 26-24 to Queensland. And I guess Blues fans want to tell you about the penalty count, and the narrative coming out of the game is, of course, it's 1-1 because the NRL wants a decider, right? But the thing is, but hang on a second. Have you heard of the concept of betting and being able to make money if you know what a result is going to be, right? So if you knew, of course, that was going to happen, then did you bet on Queensland at $3.20 head to head? You know, in the preview, we specifically raised that factor. I've said it in both previews that the NRL wants 1-1. Queensland needs a bit of a leg up because we would all agree the Blues are superior side, and especially staring down the barrel of series defeat. You know, that was a massive factor as to why I leaned Queensland, though I wasn't brave enough to tip them to win outright. But you certainly saw that possibility, and that would definitely make it a closer game in game 2. And boy, was it close. I mean, we nearly got the biggest comeback in Origin history. And, you know, in years past, like there's a comment there from Chris, momentum a big factor in the game. Like, you just couldn't fathom a team could be up 20 in an Origin game and lose. But if it was ever going to happen, and of course it didn't happen because Queensland hung on, but if it was ever going to happen, it would be this year, where there's just been some crazy swings, crazy comebacks, more than we've ever seen before. It's the style of the game and the nature of momentum in a game that I've covered before, and why I want to look to bet more extreme results. You know, and the extreme result to bet last night was probably to bet Queensland to win by a margin and for them to bounce back in a big way. And at halftime, it's 26-6, and Queensland's a 15.5-point favourite. And if you bet Queensland by a margin, you would have got some mega odds, but it actually comes back to be really close, which did cash the best bet that Padonis shared. A nice insight there from Ryan. Whichever team has a warrior wins. And JK says, how good was Capewa? So we get to that. But how about some of the stats? Queensland had less possession, just like they did in game 1. Less meters, like game 1. More errors than the Blues, like game 1. Less tries than the Blues, like game 1. But Queensland have leveled the series. And, you know, I was getting 2023 grand final vibes out of this, where Penrith went into that as a favourite, although the Blues were an even bigger favourite last night. Blues were 6.5-point favourites, bigger than what Penrith was against Brisbane. But it was the underdog getting out to a massive lead. Of course, 2023, that grand final lead was as big as 24-8. Last night, 26-6. But you went from thinking that the underdog was going to have a blowout victory to suddenly being like, oh, they could lose this. And Queensland absolutely could have lost it and had to dig in late as they were outscored 4-0 in the second half. So why didn't Queensland lose? Apart from some stout defense at the end to turn the Blues away. Of course, we're going to talk about goal kicking, right? And so this comes back to the fact that maybe we underestimated the Cleary injury going into the game. It was brought up at the press conference that Cleary didn't do the training session with captain's run, and he dismissed it and said, oh, it's load management. But looking back now, we know like he was doing way less kicking. He wasn't fully training. You wonder if because Moses was withdrawn with the calf, if Cleary felt he had to play through injury. Now, after the game, Laurie Daly has said it was nothing more than groin tightness to the eye, and looking at the compression bandage Cleary had, it seemed more like a quad-related issue. It changed the way Cleary played. He didn't have the same threat as an in-game kicker, and Cleary would have been the first choice goal kicker. Yes, Cleary missed a bunch of conversions in game one, which does make an interesting stat that the Blues are 2 from 9 on conversions in the series. But I, didn't expect that was going to carry on whatsoever. So, you would have had full faith in Cleary kicking goals in this one. He's not able to kick, so you go down to Lomax. Well, Lomax is still a very capable kicker. But unfortunately, in this kicks 2 from 5, unfortunately for the Blues, 1 from 4. Is it Lomax? Sorry, was Lomax? Yeah, that was 2 from 5, including kicking the first one in off the post and then the last one, which was close to the post, but 3 misses in a row in the second half when the Blues were trying to mount that comeback. I'm going to circle back and talk more about the penalty count. Don't worry, Nathan. But my first point was you could have bet on that if you knew it was going to happen, right? So the 3 missed conversions in a row really hurts New South Wales. They lose by 2 points, of course. There were 4 conversions from out wide for Lomax. He made 1 of them. Obviously, you'd like to at least make half of those. I don't want to be too critical of Lomax because they were all out wide, but my observation of Lomax's goal kicking has always been he kicks it too hard, and I couldn't help but think he missed to the right of the post for all of them, and if you didn't kick it as hard, would it drift a little bit more right to left, as most sort of right-footed kickers do? That is the difference in the game. Sometimes goal kicking is. And while everybody will bring up that Lomax cost the Blues, how about the fact that Val Holmes drilled a couple from the sideline? That's the difference. People were criticizing Val Holmes after game one, questioning whether he should be there. I mean, those kicks are absolutely massive. And it's just as much that Val won the game for Queensland as Lomax's kicks were costly. But of course, you hate to be harsh, but it was very costly for New South Wales. And it goes back to Cleary wasn't able to kick. That hurt the Blues because they went down to their second choice kicker. And also, Cleary couldn't have the same impact in the game. And there's parallels to the 2023 grand final there too, because Cleary was definitely injured. We know now he did his meniscus or something in the game because he was out for the internationals afterwards. And so you didn't think Cleary was going to mount a comeback in that game either, but how wrong, of course, Broncos fans were. And a lot of Broncos fans, of course, are Queensland fans and nearly thought they saw it again last night. The Blues gave Queensland an almighty scare. And I can tell you as a Queenslander, that would have been one of those comebacks that would have taken a long time to recover from. I mean, I don't know if Billy recovers from that. I don't know if the playing group recovers. It's series over if the Blues score a try in those final 3 minutes or make a couple extra kicks. Who cares about game 3? And that probably means the Maroons get blown out in game 3 and it's the first whitewash in over 20 years for the Blues. And, that would take a long time to recover from. But Queensland hangs on. So 26-6 after conceding the opening try. The Maroons looked really good, building that lead, playing the best footy they have of the series. You could really argue Queensland's only played 1 good half out of 4, but it was enough to build a 26-6 lead. Looking like a new team. Munster running the ball. Dearden there at 7. Shift Hammer out to the wing. He's got a double, including an aerial try there. And Queensland on the back of, again, 8-0 penalty count helps. Now, that's not the whole story because there were a bunch of 6 agains. There was a very early 6 again against Munster that actually gave the Blues the chance to score the first try, which they did, And you also have to say of the 8-0 penalty count, realistically, there's got to be a couple that go back the Blues' way that have probably been missed. But of those 8 penalties, you've got several that are cynical that there's no debate, like Luai, gouging. Who was it? Who did he get? Forget now. Was it Cotter in the eye? The Nathan Cleary obstruction try. It's a penalty because it was an obstruction. That's not debatable. So not subjective. But of course, there's always a couple that were, as Barry says, it was scripted. But again, you think it was scripted, triple your money last night because that's what Queensland were paying head to head. I'm looking at 26-6. I didn't feel it was completely over. I looked at live odds. The line was 15.5. Queensland was $1.01 on Sportsbet. And then I looked again a few minutes later. This is at halftime. And they were out to $1.07. And people had bet the Blues in from 12s to 8s. And I was thinking, the talent the Blues have got and this type of year, it's definitely not over. The start of the second half is crucial. And of course, the Blues did score first 26-10. You know, there's a few key moments I just want to highlight before we get into the NRL, right? At 26-10, Queensland was back on the attack. Robson had got an eye gash or something like that and was getting attention. There was a really long stoppage. And I don't know if once you say you're going to tap, you can't change to actually want to kick for goal. But Queensland had to wait for like 60 seconds. I couldn't believe Queensland leading by 16 didn't take the 2 to go up 18, where now you would need the opponent would need to score 4 times to beat you. In the end, Queensland wins by 2. But realistically, Queensland definitely should have taken that 2 there because the Blues, in most circumstances, wouldn't miss all those conversions. And it was pouring rain at the time. So I was like, geez, if that comes back to bite Queensland not taking the 2 there. The other pivotal moment is when the Blues have cut the lead to 12. Queensland is still got a fair grip on the game, has a really good defensive set. The Blues only made like 20 meters off their own line. Luai has to kick a wobbly kick from his own 20, but that's the one that the Hammer knocks on. And Hammer's doing anything he can to avoid knocking on, tries to play it with his foot. Somehow the bounce beats his foot, hits his elbow, and New South Wales scores that set. So if the Blues go on to win the series, that moment costs Queensland everything. And so I marked that moment down, of course, right? The Toto try, and that's his 3rd try. So, like, what a weapon he is. You know, there's questions now, like, is Toto the greatest winger of all time? How about this stat? Toto had more meters last night in a loss than the Queensland back 3 combined, right? So Toto gets his 3rd try. That cuts the score to 26-18 with a kick to come. So you've gone from down 20 to you can now be within 6 points. And Lomax steps up and misses to the right again, like an identical miss to his previous one. And the funniest moment, how many did you guys catch this on Channel 9, right? So Lomax takes the shot, misses. It's 26-16. They cut to the Queensland box, and Billy Slater looks sick to his stomach. His head is basically in his hands, and he's thinking, 15 to go. They've just scored again. We made an error, invited them in. We're only up 8. We were up 20. We could lose the unlosable. Like, this is painful to watch. And then they cut to the Blues box, and Laurie is looking just as sick because he's just watched Lomax miss 3 conversions in a row, and he's thinking we could be down 2. We could be within a try. You know, this could be a 1-score game. Somehow we've just scored 3 straight second half tries, and we're still down 8. So it was just hilarious to me that both coaching boxes looked in absolute dismay. Obviously, the Blues. Funny stat as well, that New South Wales have never come back from a halftime deficit bigger than 6 points in 45 years of Origin history, and nearly had a chance to come back from down 20. But when you're scoring in 4s instead of 6s, you know, that just kept it at arm's bay. Is arm's bay an expression? Or arm's length? Kept them at bay. Again, Queensland, yeah, they did get the first 9 penalties. But if you want to go full conspiracy, I am seeing a few people commenting about the full conspiracy, right? But answer me this. If you really believe that it's scripted and the NRL is going to do everything within their power to make sure Queensland won this because there's so much more money, because of the marketing, the TV audience, the hype, everything, ticket sales for Game 3, right? They had to make sure Queensland won, so they made it impossible for the Blues to make a game of this. This is not my opinion. This is like a common narrative, right? If you believe that's the case, and that's why it was 9-0 penalty count before the Blues got 1. With 3 minutes to go and the Blues are still down 2 points, they put up a bomb. Ponga drops another one, and Queensland challenges it. And you look at the slow motion replay, and it goes backwards from Ponga. Like, am I crazy, or did he not sort of bobble it into his own head? But it's not a knock on until it hits somebody else or hits the ground. And after it left Ponga's mitts, it was traveling backwards. So if the NRL truly is rigged, all they had to do was overturn the call and say that's gone backwards. They actually, because then Queensland gets the ball and New South Wales might get one more set and from their own half. But the bunker rules in favour of the Blues, sticks with the onside call and gives the Blues a scrum with 3 minutes left and every chance to win the game. Like, my point is, why would the NRL go to all this trouble to rig the game, but then you've got like a 50-50 call at the end of the game that's going to massively decide the probability of who will win, and they're going to go in the Blues' favour? What, so did they know that Queensland would keep the Blues out? Because I was bloody nervous at that point, just with all the fatigue in the game, the fact that the Blues had all the momentum, all that firepower, and you're one moment away from snatching it and getting like an all-time win and an all-time demoralising loss. And thankfully for Queenslanders and for general footy fans, I suppose, who want a decider, want the series to remain alive, as we know, Queensland did hang on there. So despite the fact that that call went New South Wales' way, and I'm not whinging about the call, I'm just saying if you really thought it was rigged, wouldn't that have gone Queensland's way too? Because I actually do think that would have been pretty justifiable because it did go backwards, but I understand why they went with the on-field call. Ponga had a shocking night, though, I've got to say, like dropped at least 3 bombs. One of them he got let off the hook because they said Luai was offside. Also thought Ponga had bad misses on tries. I think at least one time getting across. I know Val Holmes was the first miss on Crichton, but Ponga could have stopped that or at least made a better effort. He had at least one whiff on To'o in cover defence. And the Cleary try, which gets ruled out for obstruction, that was an obstruction on Carrigan. Ponga wasn't obstructed at all. And he had a bad miss on Cleary. And that was at a critical moment where Cleary could have turned the tide had that try counted. At that point in the game, it was 20-6. So it would have been 20-12. Instead, Queensland scores off the subsequent penalty and goes in up 20 points instead of up 8. So massive moment. So I'm going to get to like what changes they should make. And I just wonder if Queensland's happy with Ponga at fullback. Now, again, from our preview, I didn't have a best bet. Padonis did tip either team 1-12. So you're a bit worried with the 20-point margin at halftime. The Blues come back. You cash that easily. Well done, Padonis. Another win. He's 10-4 on the show. He also called Munster man of the match, and that was paying as much as $14. So that's a very juicy man of the match tip. I went Ponga. So I'm picking some duds for man of the match because I had Harry Grant in game 1 and Ponga in game 2, and they're a couple of the worst on ground. Although at least Ponga, was on the winning side, so he's not going to mind too much. But whether he retains his jersey, I want to ask you guys, what changes would you make for both states? Let me know in the comments. I'll read some out. Look, Munster, very deserving man of the match. Not just all his runs, he led Queensland in meters, had a try, but I love the way Munster rushed out of the line and stifled some Blues attacks, like really breathing down the necks of some of the Blues halves and sort of disrupting their depth and their shape. I thought Dearden made some big tackles as well. That perfect kick to the hammer was key. Harry Grant genuinely could have been man of the match this time around. Awesome. Played the full 80 back to himself. Showed why Queensland have a real advantage at the hooker position, and 55 tackles in the middle on a wet night is a huge effort. Someone mentioned it before. Capewell, what a blinder. A lot of people question that selection. And even for me, I said, is he better than Beau Fermor? But he is coming from a team that's going a lot better. So maybe you bring in that greater positive energy and greater sort of habits and discipline. But Capewell, he's the kind of guy you pick and hope that, he'll hold his own. But he was outstanding. Second most meters among Queenslanders, a strong try, 4 tackle breaks. And as I say, really a good duel with the man across from him, Liam Martin. I mentioned Hammer before, moving to the wing. He's just a natural, scores a double. I also mentioned Holmes, like questioning his spot before game 2, kicks 5 from 5, had that big hit on Martin that got possession for Queensland. Another unsung hero. What about long arm Loiero? Gets more minutes than Carrigan and allowed Carrigan to actually come on and play prop. I really like the strong carries from Loiero. Great defense in the middle there. Billy put faith in him, and that was rewarded there because a lot of people were questioning whether he should be in the side, but he ended up starting at lock and, was not out of place at all. And it was actually the Queensland forwards that got the better of the Blues last night. As for New South Wales, and let me know if there's anything else you'd add, but clearly their best players, Brian To'o, scores a hat-trick for 200 and something odd meters. Unbelievable. Haas, again, was one of their very best. Cleary, not right, and that raises the issue of how much of an injury is that. He's not going to play this weekend regardless. They're over in New Zealand. We'll get to that game. But is this a concern leading into Origin 3? Because Moses is out for Origin 3. If Cleary's under some sort of injury cloud, I want to know who the Blues halves should be. Luai, a mixed night, early errors, kick out on the full, discipline, cost him with giving away that penalty. But Luai also did have a couple of those try assists off the boot. Toto scores 3 times. Those are going through the hands of, like, Luai has a hand in those as well. So Luai was better in the second half comeback, as you would expect. The Blues did win the second half 4 tries to none. Would Matty Burton's size and potentially, dare I say, his big boot have come in handy last night? I would have gone with Burton over Luai, but there you go. I didn't feel like Latrell was involved enough. You could probably say the same for Crichton. I know Latrell had a nice touch in a couple of the Toto tries, but maybe it's just a case of not getting enough ball to those superstars out wide, and maybe that's part of the conditions. But yeah, as a Queenslander, I wasn't as frightened as I expected to be going up against Crichton and Latrell, where those really should have been positions where the Blues should have dominated. We talked about in the preview that the outside backs was a big advantage to the Blues, but I feel like New South Wales didn't really utilise those players enough. Changes for Queensland, a lot of people are going to say you don't change anything, but I'll tell you now, I would bring Murray Taulagi in. I think for a decider, Taulagi's not there because he was injured. He's an incumbent, played in winning series before, played for Australia. Toya has done everything you could ask of him, so this would not be like dropping Toya for doing anything wrong. This would just be, he's a young guy, he's played like 12 NRL games. He was in for an injured player, but I would rather have Taulagi back in and then move Hammer back into the centres where Hammer has played for Australia, right? I would do that just because I think it makes the Queensland backline stronger, and the Blues are going to be a lot better, and the Blues are not going to lose the penalty count 9-0 in Game 3. So Queensland have to look to be better. Queensland also have to face the fact that they very nearly did lose last night. And I would take a long, hard look at how Ponga plays in the next couple of weeks, because you do have Reece Walsh as an option, just a straight swap if Ponga's just not in the form that we sort of expect and need him to be as Queenslanders are. And the other option would be, if you bring in Taulagi into the back line, Toya keeps his spot and you actually play Hammer at fullback. So I think all 3 options are in play: Ponga, Hammer, and Walsh at fullback in the decider. I know you want to keep faith, and we're still Queenslanders, and Billy's got a great relationship with Ponga, but obviously if a player is struggling a lot, then you've got to make hard decisions. So I think nothing would be definitive, and you don't know who's going to be fit in 2 weeks' time, but I think Billy would be looking closely at those players and how they go in clubland. As for New South Wales, so who is fit for the halves? Of course, if Cleary's right to go, he's there. And do you go Luai again? As I said, he had a mixed occasion. Do you give Burton the chance in a decider? It would be Burton's first game for the Blues in the halves, I believe. If Cleary's not fit, are you going Luai 7, Burton 6? Are you going the form halfback in the comp? My man, Isaiah Katoa, but are you throwing him into an Origin debut for a decider? That's a big question, and it's all going to come down to the fitness of Cleary and how that quad or groin pulls up in a couple of weeks. As for elsewhere, I mean, I think Koloamatangi, he has that fracture, but he's a chance of even playing this week. So you'd say Koloamatangi will be definitely right in 3 weeks. He would come onto my bench, probably ahead of Max King or Yuto Kamanu. They're probably a little underwhelmed out of both of those players, the Blues, and I feel like Koloamatangi's more of a game-changing player. I'd potentially also still try and fit Olakau'atu into the team. That's the type of players I don't want to play against as a Queenslander. So for what it's worth, those are the guys I'd be suggesting. Let's bring in your comments, guys. Phil, not the first time the bunker got it wrong. Barry says, NRL has been dying last 5 years. Rule changes are ruining everything. They need these spectacle games. And that gets back to the conspiracy theory stuff. And I do not dismiss you. I've said the similar stuff, that the NRL absolutely does want a decider and there could be influential factors. But I don't go as far to say, it's totally rigged. And if you feel that way, again, bet it before the result. You could make a lot of money. James, Latrell and Crichton have a higher conversion percentage this year. Is that true? Higher than what? Than Lomax? I thought Lomax had been kicking pretty well, like last year and this year. But maybe if you count last night, then that you're going to take a bit of a hit when you do kick 2 or 5. Like, to me, Stephen Crichton, I absolutely love him as a player. I don't completely trust him as a kicker, but you're definitely right to bring up Latrell after Lomax had missed 1 or 2, like whether Latrell could have taken the reins there. And that's going to be something Laurie will have to consider too, especially if Cleary is semi-fit for the decider. Barney, what do you reckon? Ponga out, Walsh, Fermor. No, Walsh in for Ponga, he wants, and Fermor in for Cotter, and bring Horsburgh in for Mo. I wouldn't displace Cotter or Mo, to be honest, but it's hard to fit everybody in. I feel like Horsburgh hasn't done much wrong this year, but Billy just hasn't quite looked his way. But you never know, with injuries, suspension could still happen. And Barney, being a staunch Broncos fan, he definitely likes Walsh there. Barry says, get Burton in for Luai in more colourful language. For Barney's opinion on the Blues team, he would bring Pappenhausen. It's another consideration. Katoa and Burton in. Christian says, should always hold your own. It would be very weird to see someone else hold yours, especially while you pee. Touche. James, bring Walsh or Talangi in for Ponga. Yeah, and then if Talangi's in for Ponga, then obviously Hammer's your fullback choice. Big Red in for Mo. A couple of people want to kick Mo out of there. I didn't really see him put too much of a foot wrong, but maybe I'll go back and look at the stats as well. Barry, the wet conditions slow the game down, spreading the balls. New South Wales should have ran it up the middle. That's the thing, though. Even in the wet conditions, there was still, 50-odd points? There was still 9 tries. So it was a bloody entertaining game. I know, it had errors and, maybe it was a bit chaotic and messy at times. But, geez, yeah, I thought it was an Origin classic. Colt says Toya, the weakest link. They kept going down that side. That's part of it as well. Toya, just inexperienced, perhaps shut in a bit too quickly, which created the overlap that Toto benefited from a couple of times. James says Lomax shouldn't be allowed to kick. Peter Valandi says Aaron Woods is available. Okay, there you go. So that's what I say. We're going to talk for 10 minutes on Origin. We're into 27 minutes. Sorry, guys. I can't help myself, eh? Let's give you my best bets, and then I'll try and go a bit more rapid for round 16, game by game. Okay, so we bring up Tigers Raiders. I don't have a best bet on that. I'll just tell you my best bets now, though, just in case someone's looking for them after the fact. I'm going to go Sharks, which is not until Sunday, but I'm going to go Sharks team total over 18.5 at $1.80 on 365. I like the Sharks to give Brisbane everything they can handle at Suncorp in beautiful conditions. The line's 4.5. I just preferred the overs because I think both teams have got about 4 tries in them, a lot of firepower in that game. And I think Cronulla will be very competitive after, bouncing back and with a good, strong comeback win that was a best bet winner for us as well last week. Yes, that'll be the 4th straight week. I somewhat am backing Cronulla, but I like, their team total over on a sunny afternoon. And then I'm going the Titans on Sunday night, and they are -2.5 on the road against Para, but the Eels have no Dylan Brown, no Mitch Moses. Titans get back their Origin props. Looks really good in that win over Manly. I think they get a bit of confidence and energy out of that, and I just don't know where the Eels are going to get points from that would allow them to keep pace with the Titans. So Titans -2.5, $1.95 on 365. So just 2 best bets this week after I think the last couple of weeks I've had 3, and then the previous 4 weeks I had 4, but that's just the way I see it. I never want to force it. I just play what I really like the look of, and as I said before, we're 58%. I did want to also talk about the NRL ladder. Geez, is it going to be easy for me to bring that up? Let me try and bring up the ladder. Let's just talk about it because I think this is good sort of water cooler conversation. Okay, I want to talk about the top 8, my opinion. I think I mentioned this on a previous pod. I think the top 4 is set. So you've got Dogs, Raiders, Warriors, Storm. So let's agree that will be the top 4 in some order. There's too much of a gap to breach, and those sides are all going too well. Then you got 5th and 6th, you got Sharks and Dolphins. And I'm going to proclaim that they're both going to play finals footy. So I'm very confident that the Sharks and Dolphins are too good to miss the finals. Of course, anything can happen and, massive injury waves and everything like that. But based on how I see it right now, I think the top 6 will stay in the finals hunt, which means there's only 2 spots left for finals footy. And I'm looking at 7th, 8th, and 9th. Broncos, Roosters, Panthers. And I think those 3 teams are going to fight out those remaining 2 spots. So I'm basically dismissing everybody else. Is that fair? I'm dismissing the Cowboys. That was so pitiful last weekend. Manly's got so many issues. The Dragons, too inconsistent. The Tigers just haven't delivered enough this year. Souths probably just missing key players a little bit too much. Another tough game this weekend. The Knights, you don't trust. Eels and Titans, too many injuries and coming last, second last. So when you look at it the way I've laid it out, you've actually got maybe only 9 teams truly left in the fight, and maybe those 3 from 7th to 9th fighting for a couple of spots. But that also shows you how important games are involving those sides, because a team like Penrith to miss the finals after winning 4 straight comps, and if they make the finals, being a team nobody wants to play against, Brisbane could be in the same boat just because of the top end talent the Broncos possess. Not everyone agrees with that, but Brisbane was, I think, 3rd favourites coming into the comp this year. The Roosters don't sleep on them either, as I said before. Sam Walker's still going to return into this side. And they still, despite never being in the top 8 this year, the Roosters still had, 5 players picked in Origin, and they're all back this weekend as well. So, look, let's start talking about these teams. So, the Raiders, who are having a magnificent year, and the Tigers, who I'm somewhat riding off. Of course, anybody lower on the ladder can put together a win streak and defy what I've just said then. But that is how I see it as it currently stands, and I thought maybe worth a little stock take. Okay, I want to bring up the team lists for Raiders, Tigers, and yeah, let's just keep trying to roll it and keep a good pace here. Raiders are a 9.5-point favourite. It's at Campbelltown. Both teams are off a bye. The Tigers had a tough loss the week before to Penrith. Twal and Bolle are back. Luai played Origin. This is a tough one. Origin Wednesday night in Perth. It takes a day to get home, and this game is tomorrow night. Is Luai going to be able to back up physically? We don't know. Canberra are in the same boat, I suppose. Hudson Young played off the bench, maybe slightly more likely. Both are important to their team, though Luai is more important to the Tigers in terms of how much they rely on him. The Raiders were the last side in the comp to receive a bye, but would have enjoyed that last round after rolling the Rabbitohs the week before. Other important team news, Jed Stewart, who is the son of Ricky, debuting on the wing, replacing the boom rookie Tamale. Straight away, you know how much the team loves Ricky, and you can imagine how switched on they'll be to make it a special occasion for Jed's debut. The Raiders flying, I just put the ladder up before, 11 wins from 14. Sometimes you worry a bye can stall momentum when a team's playing so well, but given they'd played 14 straight and been to Vegas, you would have felt it would definitely have been appreciated. And the Raiders get to come back in now and play a very winnable game, obviously, against an underwhelming Tigers side. The Tigers promised a fair bit this year. I thought had a real shot at making finals, but have now lost 4 in a row. So the Tigers are 5 from 13. But it's not over yet. There's teams with 5 wins, 6 wins that are in the top 8. Like, anybody can win 3 weeks in a row and be in the 8. And the Tigers getting back some muscle into their pack at a good time to compete with Canberra here. And I do think West can compete when they're at their best. But the Tigers have not been consistent week in, week out, whereas the Raiders have and been consistently fierce at that all year long. This is a Joe at the pub game. He picks the Raiders and he picks a bunch of same gamers and he lays the line with the Raiders, right? So I'm actually looking the other way, thinking West forwards can step up here, make this closer. But Canberra's got so much confidence right now. They're able to really put teams away, unlike past years where the Raiders had a lot of close wins. And I go back to Ricky's son is on debut here. I do think that's a factor. I'm not going to step in front of the Raiders minus 9.5. I ultimately think if I had to set this line, that's what I would make it to. So I'll move on to Saturday afternoon at Mount Smart. Warriors, Panthers. Panthers are a 13.5-point underdog. Did you hear Andrew Webster's comments? He's commenting about why he hasn't picked Capewell, who played Origin, of course, and saying, I just don't feel it's right. It's a player safety thing. Like, just for the safety of the player, I will not pick Capewell. I couldn't help but feel, very noble of you that you talk all about safety and you're going to rest your one Origin player and make a big deal out of how important it is that they don't play. And you're playing Penrith, who have 5 of the best players of the decade who happen to all play Origin. You probably hope that Ivan considers their safety first too. And they are also going to be left out by the look of things, which means Penrith are under strength. Just back to Webster, though. Did he worry about Mitch Barnett's safety when he backed him up from Origin? Then he did his ACL. That would be my question. But anyway, maybe that's a bit cynical of me. Penrith under strength. Laurie is fullback, as you can see there. Schneider partners Talangi in the halves. The pack is still solid. Eisenhuth's at lock, Papali'i in to start for Martin. And of course, another storyline, Fisher Harris facing his former side. Both of these teams had the bye in round 15 after winning in round 14. I mentioned Penrith won close versus West. The Warriors, how could I forget, blew out my best bet out of the water with a spirited win at Shark Stadium. And that did really open my eyes to just how good this Warriors side can be in a spot that had no right to play that well. Great team chemistry, intensity, and that was despite losing Barnett, as I just mentioned. I could only play New Zealand in this game. I just wonder if Penrith sees it as a bit of a free roll, like it's a team trip to a game where you're not expected to win by anyone without your mainstays. I do feel New Zealand should be too much to handle for Penrith here. Last time Penrith played without Origin stars, they got punished by the Knights. But you look at Penrith and that lineup there, you still got internationals like Leota. Lindsay Smith's technically an international, did play for the Kangaroos last October. Does that help combat the powerful New Zealand pack? Some talented outside backs on both sides. You feel there's more class in the Warriors with like the season of, well, Metcalf, Egan, Clark are all having the best year of their career. And I'll also, since I did have a little jab at Webster there, I will also say, I was pretty vocal in that the Warriors' best option is RTS at fullback, and then Nickel Cook started playing at centre. I said that several times after seeing in the preseason, and then I repeated myself, watching the Warriors struggle offensively early. But I'll retract that statement. I will say I was wrong. Chance doesn't show up on the highlight reel, but he is relentless, provides a lot through perseverance. Webby, I criticised your comments a minute ago, but I salute you for sticking with CNK. He's an underrated player, a powerhouse. And this line is 12.5, 13.5. I lean New Zealand. Sorry, I hope I don't upset any Waz fans, although I feel like we've got a little bit of a combative relationship. It's no animosity on my side. I love New Zealand, but I feel like any time I tip against them or suggest they don't win, I hear about it. The fans are very passionate. So maybe New Zealand fans didn't want me to be on the Warriors for a best bet. I thought about it a lot. Question mark there. Have I got a lean? Yeah, definite lean to New Zealand. And, it might not have been a good enough bet for me, but the Undertaker has found a play in this game. So let's have a listen.
G'day guys, still hurting from last night, but congrats to the Queensland Ashley Kleins on squaring the series. We'll get you in Sydney. My best bet of the week is going to be laying the points with the Warriors over the Panthers. It's 12.5, $1.91 on Sportsbet. Look, the Panthers' intentions are clear. They're resting everyone. No one that played in Origin's playing the game, so it's a pretty clear indication of the playing group that they're just punting on this game. It's the hardest road trip in the NRL. Panthers aren't even really going to try, so this is one they're going to drop. They're going to drop it pretty badly, I think. So last time they played a game with the B team, the Panthers lost by 19 to the Knights, and that was without Ponga. I just don't think it's going to be competitive. Waz roll, good luck.
Well, there you go. So, that's the only side I could play. Of course, I disagree with the sentiment of that the Panthers aren't going to try, but when you choose to not play your stronger side, it does somewhat signal the intent to the rest of the squad. Though clearly this game isn't do or die, but I actually feel like there's so much good, strong culture in Penrith that even when the backups are in there, that they usually have a red hot crack. I did bet on the Knights and sort of picked that upset because Penrith was pretty depleted on that occasion. And so you can make the same argument this time around, I suppose. But that Penrith team was a 8.5 point favourite against the Knights. And I thought that doesn't make sense. That squad's not strong enough to be a big favourite. This is a bit different. They're 12.5 point underdogs. However, respect the way Matty sees it. And, of course, maybe just a little bit of salt there after last night. But he's not having the best week, Matty. He's a Manly fan and he's a Blues fan. I've put the best bets there on the screen as well, just my two. And Matty liking New Zealand minus 12.5. Funnily enough, Matty forgot that I wasn't doing this pod on Tuesday, and he sent me that tip, New Zealand minus 12.5. And I said, sorry, bro, I'm not doing the pod till Thursday, so the line will probably move to minus 15.5. But funnily enough, it stayed solid. So everyone knew even before Origin 1 that like you weren't going to back up the 5 Penrith players who have to get all the way from Perth to Auckland. So they're not even going to make that trip. I've scrolled now to my team, which, speaking of Perth, we're back in Perth on Saturday night for Dolphins Knights. The Dolphins are an 11.5-point favourite and are the hottest team in the comp, have scored 158 points in the last 3 weeks. And they even defied my own lofty expectations because my one losing bet last round was the fact that I tipped against my Finns with the line. And I do think the Cowboys were deplorable, but still there's no denying how good the Dolphins were. My only regret is, as a Finns fan, that we have been hit as hard as any team in the comp with key forward injuries. So many legit starting forwards for this side who are out for the season or in injury limbo. And you just can't help but think as a Finns fan, if those players were available, your Saifidi, your Gilbert, Flegler, Plath will come back, but those other 3 in particular, we could just be a couple of middles away from true contention. Am I overstating it? That when I watch how well the Dolphins can attack, I really feel like they can mix it with anybody, but they'll probably come up a couple of elite forwards short in finals games, which I predict the Dolphins will be playing in, but there's still a bit of work to do because maybe I am getting a bit too excited. The Dolphins are only 7-7 so far. Now, the Dolphins don't need a championship roster to throw down with these Knights who had a late loss against the Roosters at home. There were no Origin reps on either side in that game. It's a bit of a different Knights team this round. KP is back. Well, he stays in WA, and there's reinforcements on board. Fletcher Sharp was out last week. He's back. Same story for Frizzell. Best has had a long layoff. He returns this week. 7-hour flight over to Perth and then test out the hammy. What could go wrong, right? Dom Young has transferred to the Knights after actually playing in that Roosters game on the other side. The Finns do get back Hammer, another player who has been enjoying Perth so far, but Kaufusi suspended. Nichols will start, and Isaiah Katoa, I mentioned before, not out of the realm of possibility he could be playing in Origin 3. But what do you guys think about that? But Katoa is captain, 21-year-old. I don't know if that's a move to try and make sure we can keep this kid. All the talk this year about likes of Lockie Galvin, and meanwhile, I feel like Katoa is a little bit out of sight, out of mind. He's really special. I'm excited. And I hope that the Perth Bears aren't looking too closely at him when he is playing over there at, what's it called? HBF Park, yeah. Everyone else just keep your mitts off him, please. Look, the Knights are languishing in 15th. They're off a tough loss. You do somewhat feel that the season's slipping away for Newcastle, but when you do get that amount of class back, as I mentioned, it gives a lot of confidence and potential hope to the team that, hang on, there's a spark there. We've got the troops back on deck. We can mix it with teams, and the ladder is so congested that nobody's out of it yet. And so there's still plenty of time for Newcastle to make a bit of a push, but the Dolphins are just airborne at the moment. What the Finns are lacking up front is more than being compensated with the stars in the back line, connecting like clockwork. I said that before, the 21-year-old sensation pulling all the right reins. The Finns, are they not the most entertaining team in the comp at the moment? How do you think the Dolphins are going to go on this fast track in Perth, given that there were 9 tries scored in the rain in Origin, which is traditionally lower scoring, last night? And having said all that, I stared at the alt line for the Knights and the plus 12.5 because I am a contrarian. I do think the Finns will feel the pinch of missing those key forward members. Marcus says Dolphins have good depth, but still, it will come back to bite the Dolphins, I fear. And this game could be a shootout, but the Knights come in, they say, we've got a few bullets of our own. We've got Ponga, we've got Best, we've got Sharp back on deck. And Dom Young as well. The only reason I'm not playing Newcastle is I am genuinely worried about Ponga just not being himself. Is that because he's dealing with more injury issues than we really know? I talked about Bradman Best. I probably want to see one game from him back to make sure he's at his destructive best. And also, when you play plus 12.5, you sort of want the favourite to just be happy enough to win. But the Dolphins have been showing no mercy lately. So I think for that reason, the bookies have made this line a little too expensive. It's mostly 10.5. The 12.5 I'm talking about was $1.80. On a neutral, that feels a little high to me, but it just might be a really bad year for the Knights, and it could be a great year for the Dolphins. So I've left it alone. Saturday night, Bunnies Storm at a core, and the Storm are 12.5-point favourites. Melbourne's off a bye after covering over the Cows. Man of the match, Munster, Grant, Liero, Coates, Utokamanu are all named to back up, but it's a challenging one. It's a Saturday night. It's a 3-day turnaround, really, only 2 days between games, and one of them is going to be travel from Perth. Are those guys going to back up? What do you think? Let me know in the comments, because you'd have to be cautious with a Harry Grant that's had a hamstring injury. Like Munster threw everything into Wednesday night. The Rabbits, this is a hard game to predict, honestly, because I look at the Rabbitohs. They've got the same decision to make around Latrell, who has had a long-term injury this year, but also in the reserves, which you can't see on the screen, but you've got Cody Walker, Campbell Graham, and Keon Koloamatangi. So you just don't know who's really going to be involved in this game. Like as it stands, Lewis Dodd is starting at 6, but he would drop out if Cody returns. The Bunnies secured that best bet win for us last week, and the winning round 2. They were down 18-0 against the Dogs, but it ended up 4 tries apiece. We covered the line with a Hail Mary, very late trial for scrum. But, of course, if you caught the Bunnies-Dogs game, you saw the Dogs, who were up 8 with a couple of minutes to go, decide to take the 2 because they knew the best bet was plus 8.5. Why else do you take the 2? No one wants to go from a lead of 8 to 10. The the Dogs nearly lost the game because of that, because instantly, as soon as you take the 2, it's now a kickoff, which is a contested possession, which the Bunnies actually got the ball back from and scored, and then had a chance to level the game so you could potentially win. So anyway, don't tell me I was lucky because of that late try, because that late penalty by the Dogs was ridiculous. But after that happened, yes, it was lucky that we got the cover there. Anyway, so the Bunnies did play but lost on the weekend. These sides have already met too, just a few weeks ago in Melbourne, and Storm got the 2 points, but it was pretty even for the most part. I could only play Souths in this one. Yes, the Storm are better. Yes, the Storm are more fresh. But I just tend to think Melbourne could err on the side of caution with the likes of Munster and Grant. I know Bennett is not the type to panic, but the Bunnies need to get a move on here. If it's a closer call with where Latrell plays, Walker plays, it's more likely the Bunnies probably need to lean on those guys, as opposed to Melbourne. You've got Wishart in the interchange, same with Garlic, and you still could win without playing Grant and Munster. So I actually thought if I can get 6.5 first half, I'll play the Storm, I'll play the Rabbits, because the Storm are a 12.5-point favourite. Usually you can get a 6.5 for a half if you can get 12.5 for the game, but I could not get one, so not over $1.80. And I do worry a bit about the second half because of that freshness for the Storm. The way that the Raiders ran over the Bunnies late is still in my memory, and I was on the Bunnies on that day. So, look, I would say this. If you like the Bunnies, maybe you are brave enough to take the 12.5 now. If you want to play Melbourne, I would wait. You either get the confirmation that those reps are pulled up okay, or you get a couple of good players out for Melbourne. You might still like them, and it may trickle into a single-figure line. I wonder if that's how Padonis is seeing it, because Padonis has a pick on this game. I feel like the only side you could be on is Bunnies. I haven't checked out his clip. He's a New South Welshman, but I've got no doubt he'll have a pep in his step after his selections for Origin, and let's have a listen to who he likes on Saturday night.
G'day guys, Padonis here. Hope you're all safe and well. Coming to you for a special round 16 edition on a Thursday pod with Winnie. For those of you who watched the game yesterday, it was a fantastic second half comeback performance by the Blues. Unfortunately, they just fell short. We did cash our best bet, however, at either team to win 1-12. And for those of you who liked Queensland like I did, hopefully a few of you followed the $14 about Cam Munster for man of the match. Saluted with ease on that one. For round 16, we're going to go to Saturday night. Best bet is going to be first half plus 6.5. South Sydney Rabbitohs against Melbourne Storm. Put simply, at the moment, the power rating for these two teams is based on Melbourne at full strength. I have some doubts whether or not they're going to play all their Origin contingent, given the workload that we saw from Munster and Harry Grant playing in 80 minutes there for game 2. I definitely think that a few of those guys could get ruled out. For South, they're on a losing streak. They're desperate to bounce back, to stay in contention with the top 8. In the bench, or the reserve, sorry, they've got Cody Walker, Campbell Graham, and Koloamatangi has trained all week. So the reports are that he will start. Assuming all team lists can go well, this has the potential to close at something like plus 7.5, 8.5, but I just can't see it climbing any higher. So happy to grab the first half hooker to convert a try. Good luck, gamble responsibly.
Oh, I thought Padonis was on the plus 12.5, but then he said first half hook with a converted try. So let me double check that. Sorry, I was sort of half listening. I felt like Padonis was making the case for the Bunnies. Were you guys listening closer than me? He's either found the plus 6.5 that I just said I would play, or he is taking the 12.5 for the reasons that he's outlined there. And look, I do my best to be as well prepared as I can be. It's interesting there. I feel like we see it similar, but Padonis said that Koloamatangi is likely to play and has trained all week, whereas I read a report that Koloamatangi's got a fractured face and is unlikely to play. So it's like, and that to me, like if I knew KK was in, that would have probably got me over the edge with the Bunnies as well. Tom mentioning that last year I was a Roosters lover, now I'm a Sharks lover. Look, yeah, I am higher on Cronulla than others for sure, and expecting a bit more out of this team. And that's good timing for your comment there, Tom, because we're talking about that game now, Broncos Sharks. But yeah, sorry, someone tell me, because I thought I was listening. Obviously, it's the same argument, but I just missed the line about what Padonis's actual best bet is, whether he's gone full game or halftime line. So someone can clarify that one in the comments. Sometimes when I play a clip, then I quickly try and get my other ducks in a row. Anyway, Broncos Sharks, 4.5-point favourites, Brisbane at home. They're both off much needed big wins. Brisbane's was against the cellar dwelling Gold Coast, and it was over within 20 minutes, if not sooner. Chris says that Padonis is playing the plus 6.5. So there you go. He found it. Where if I had it, I would have been on it too, but I won't claim that officially. I didn't see the odds there. But I am on this game, Sharks team total over 18.5 on 365. You've got the Sharkies getting that win over the Dragons. So, Tom, I admitted that I cost us a couple of weeks in a row when I was on Sharks with the line and they lost to the Roosters and Warriors bad, but I was not afraid to go third time in a row, look for my money where I lost it, and that comeback win by the Sharkies, who were down 18-6 at halftime and in a lot of doubt to even win the game, ended up covering 30-18 over St. George. Hiroti got injured in that game, so Talakai is the replacement. As for Brisbane, they had 2 Origin players. Sharks have none. It was Haas and Carrigan, of course, who are both named. And then Ezra Mann was 18th man. He'll be in, no doubt. Given that it's Sunday and it's Madge, I'd expect all the Origin stars are playing. So that's not, the reason why I've gone Cronulla in this one. I'm expecting Brisbane full strength, but I'm also expecting a ripping game. 2 teams that were very much on struggle street before they got wins last week or last game where they really needed it. They're both close to full strength now. Yes, Brisbane's still without Hunt, but Mam came in and is pretty explosive at 6. Cobbo's in the reserves, but he's sort of in and out of favour with multiple coaches. Brisbane are a handful at home, although, while I always respect Brisbane at home, and I feel like Brisbane in the day at home usually puts on a show, that have laid a couple of eggs recently too. I know both sides are desperate, but I just see a lot of firepower involved in this one. The total is as high as 48.5. Conditions should be beautiful. Brisbane's going to benefit coming in off a bye, but Sharks didn't play since Thursday, so get a good lead into this one. Mulatalo made a big difference, I thought, returning last week. I can see each team getting 20-plus points. I did look hard at Sharks plus 4.5. I couldn't find, 6.5. I think needing over 18.5 is the even better play. You could even score 3 tries and still get over 18.5. So, that's how I see this. That's my first best bet of the round. Benny Williamson says reports Payne could be out. So, that's even better for Cronulla, clearly, and could help him get on the front foot. They've got Fanua Blake at their disposal. And speaking of Benny, fresh off hitting a 425 winner last week and shooting up the sharpshooter leaderboard, which I'll give you the stats on the sharpshooters as well. I'll dig that up while I play this video because Benny's bet for this week is on Broncos Sharks.
G'day legends, Benny from Benny's Best Bets here. As always, thanks to the lads for having me back on. Nice to get back in the winner's circle last week with the $4.25 winner on Braden Trindle. This week, normally I'd be playing a try scorer, but by this time of the week, the value's usually gone on a lot of those, and the price we would have got on Tuesday no longer exists. So I'm going to run with unders in the Sharks and Broncos game. I've got under 48.5 at $1.92 on Dabble, thereabouts. They played 11 games at Suncorp all the way back to 2011, and I know we start to lose historical relevance there pretty quickly, but the under is 8-9. In their most recent 19 games, the under is like 15-4. So historically, it's an unders match, and these two teams have been wildly inconsistent this year. I don't mind the Sharkies to come and win. I think the Broncos at $1.50 is diabolical, and the Sharkies line is tempting, but I'm more happy with the under, and considering both teams have been wildly inconsistent in attack, and the Sharkies can turn it on defensively. So yeah, I'll be taking the under. Best of luck if you follow, lads. Let's get it.
So that's not ideal for my best bet if I've got a Sharks team total over and Benny likes the match total under. But there's plenty of wiggle room there for both of us to still hit. I only need 19, 20 points out of Cronulla. I mean, this is my point. Cronulla could lose 26-20. And therefore, the game has gone under, and Brisbane have covered the line. But I would still win my team total over. So you can see there's some good sort of numerical value in that. I'm trying to bring up my best bets again. But just one more thing on Benny. He said the same word in his preview. He said the Brisbane price is diabolical, as in it seems a bit too low this week. And I just want to shout Benny out because a week ago he said, the price for Trindle is diabolical and tipped him at $4.25 to score, and he scored something like 15 minutes in. So I like that. The sharpshooters, I've been meaning to sort of give you guys some updates. All right, Benny Howard's only given us 2 tips because he's not usually available in the time slot. He's gone 1-1, so he's down 0.05 of a unit, right? Nicole has only given 5 tips so far this year. They're all like super long shot try scorers he hasn't hit yet. So he is 0-5 minus 5 units. The regular tipsters, Benny Williamson, thanks to Trindle last week, he is 6-7, but giving a lot of plus odds picks. He's plus 2.5 or 2.25 units, I should say. Undertaker, who we haven't heard from yet, but has actually been in a little rut recently because I think he started 4-0. He's 6-7 and minus 1.36 units. And then Padonis has led the pack 10-4 plus 4.69 units. Just if you were curious. Okay, a couple more games to go. Roosters, Cowboys is next. So let's scroll to show you the lineups on screen. Cowboys, 6.5-point underdogs. The Roosters fought hard in the wet, got the 2 points in Newcastle I mentioned earlier. Cowboys were in the comfort of their own home, but gave up before halftime, honestly, against the Finns. The Roosters are likely to back up all 5 Origin stars, but Egan Butcher and Vic Radley will be out with concussions. And then the Kalmalolos dealt a blow. It's certainly not an excuse for the best bet losing last week, but lost Kalmalolo in the warm-up. He's still not right. The 4 Cowboy reps are all going to be monitored, but there's no injuries noted out of those players. I did dismiss the Cowboys' finals hopes when I discussed the ladder at the start of this show. However, they still have a chance, of course, and if they win a game like this, they could jump back ahead of the Tricolours. The thing about the Roosters, and the reason I wouldn't write them off as well, is obviously Sam Walker will come back into this team, but that's still about a month away with that broken thumb. So that doesn't help the Roosters this week. For now, it's Smith and Savala, and I do worry about the rookie halves combination without Radley to help with ball playing in the middle. But since we're speaking of lock forward for the Roosters, how about Celesi Foketi? Have you ever seen a try like that by a prop? You're not going to question the mobility on this guy who will start at 13 this week. For me, I can't go near the Cowboys. Yes, they were undermanned last week, but really they still had a team that should have been a lot more competitive, and they disintegrated against the Dolphins, while the Roosters displayed real toughness, winning a game where they didn't score until the hour mark. You've got a be pretty gritty to hang in a game like that. The Cowboys could bounce back. Sure, you've got some Queenslanders rejoining the side, be very excited. And, of course, a future Rooster, Robson, will be in there and wanting to bounce back from the result in Perth. But you look at the Roosters and who's in this week, they're bolstered in a big way too. So it's another game, and the reason I've only got a couple of best bets, it's another game where I do feel the line is pretty fair. If I could have found a 5.5, I'd be on the Roosters, I reckon, but it's in the Goldilocks zone. And look, when you're eating porridge, you want that temperature just right. But when you're looking for a line, you're trying to find an edge. And if it's sort of in the right region, then you've probably got to leave it because we're risking 10 to win 9. That's going to leave one more game to discuss, and I do have a best bet on this. Eels Titans at Combank. Titans 2.5-point favorites. It's 16th versus 17th, so is it an early spoon bowl perhaps? I'm going best bet. Titans minus 2.5, $1.95, 365. I'll tell you why. Para have dealt another blow to their season. Calf injury for Moses this time. He's out till at least round 21. And then Dylan Brown is suspended. So the halves are Joash Papali'i and Dean Hawkins. Lomax will be keen to get back on the paddock, of course, for reasons we've explained earlier. The Titans got that surprise win over Manly without their props, who have not got any reported injuries, Tino or Fodawaker. So you'd expect they'll be right to return. Dave Fafita is actually also present in the reserves for the Titans. I looked at a vintage Kieran Foran performance against his former side last Friday night. He's in the 6th, partnering Campbell. Bremo is at fullback. I wasn't expecting the Titans to be road favourites this season after their start, but it's such a depleted Parramatta. And we kind of saw earlier in the year how much the Eels struggle to score points without Moses. Now you're taking Brown away as well. The Titans, yes, they're inconsistent, but I feel like the Titans might relish playing an opponent that doesn't outclass them. The Titans know if they play their best brand of footy, they'll win this game as well. And because of the closeness of the ladder, no team has given up. I did message Tristan. I said, I know you were peeping at the ladder after that win over Manly. And he said, if they can get on a little roll, he hasn't given up yet either. So I think anything but a Titans win would be a major disappointment for Dez's men, given this opportunity for who's available for Parramatta. And I know that the Eels' defense has gotten better. I'm not expecting them to roll over. Like at home, they should make the Titans work hard. But what it comes down to is, can Para keep up with the strike that the Titans have got, especially with those star front rowers that come back in? And even if they're injected from the bench, I think the Titans are the stronger side, and this line is still only a 2.5 because not many punters really want to rush out and back the Titans, especially as a favourite, but they're a favourite for a reason. I think they get it done here. So I've only got to cover a light line. That's my second of 2 best bets. That's how I see it this week for the 7 games. I appreciate if you've stuck with me for 63 minutes, guys. Obviously, just less than half of that was recapping Origin. It is very exciting that a decider looms, but let's try and stack some more best bet wins between now and then. Hope you enjoy the weekend footy action, guys. Continue the conversation in the comments. As always, hit us a like or a subscribe makes a big difference. I hope you have a great Friday and weekend, and I'll see you all on Tuesday to preview round 17. Lego.